Hello everyone, here I am making another video. Finally, I decided to do the C180 review, so here it is. So yeah, I had the car for about a year now, so kind of got used to what it is as a car. And so let's just probably make a review out of it and see how it goes. So yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about is basically the overview of the car, how this thing came to be basically. So in the 1980s, basically, BMW created the all-new E30 car at the time, the old 3 Series. And Mercedes obviously wanted to compete with that segment, but it turned out they had no car that could compete with the E30. They had the E-Class with the W124, and then the S-Class with the W126, basically. So they set on about creating a brand new car that was smaller than the E-Class and that it could compete with the 3 Series. So that gave birth to the W201, which was the 190E, but was actually basically the birth of the C-Class. Or to put its other name, it was the first baby Benz. Now we talk about baby Benz, you think of the A-Class hatchback or the saloon or the CLA coupe, but really it was this platform that gave birth to the small Mercedes that you could buy at the time. So, and it was pretty good. The car was actually really good. It was slightly bigger than the 3 Series, and it was a bit more composed, more luxurious car, and it was a brilliant launch, really, and competed well with the 3 Series. But it also gave birth to one of the most legendary rivals with the M3 and the 190 2.3 Cosworth, even the 2.6 Cosworths. Then we got the Evo 1 and Evo 2. They fought in DTM, they fought in rallying. It was a brilliant saga, really. And Mercedes wanted to build on that, and they developed the 202, then W203, and then in 2007 we got this, the W204. And the W204 basically stayed in production all the way till 2014, till it was replaced by the current W205, which is again set to be replaced, I think, next year. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the overview. So I'm going to switch the camera and talk about the aesthetics. Alright, so let's go around and take a quick look at the exterior of the C180. Now this was like a big deal basically at the time, because Mercedes were now moving away from the more infamous double bubble headlight sort of design that carried all the way from 2001 basically with the W203 and with the rest of the cars, with the E-Class and whatnot. And now we get the more simpler design, the round shape, the more rectangular sort of look, not so smoothened out, and that's, you can probably tell because you get the two sort of character lines on the bonnet. You get one major character line going across the length of the car, and then you get a more simpler layout with the headlights, with the grille and everything. So obviously this is the C180. This is not a C63, or it's not even the C200 with the AMG Sport package. This is a standard car, so you can see it has its simpler basic bumper design, although this one has the separate grille as opposed to the more retro style you won't get from like the one that you get from the 80s or whatnot. This grille with the big Mercedes badge I think looks better on this particular car, especially when it's as basic as this, because with the other retro style grille it doesn't really look that great. So I think this is a pretty sort of simpler, neat looking design. And then you have this little character line going across the bumper as well, and you get this one sort of strong line of the bonnet that connects the fender and the bonnet. I think that's there for intentional design for the C-Class to distinguish that's moving away, has a different design language and whatnot. But really, what really stands out is the profile of the car. So if I move on the other side of the garage, you can clearly see how sporty Mercedes has tried to make this car look. The roofline is small, the rest of the car looks big, it feels very sporty in that regard, and the front arches very bulging out to give that sort of aggressive look. It's actually really good, and you can clearly see the character line well. And obviously, sorry, and don't mind with the dent, this was already there. It wasn't hit by any one of us, so yeah, it was there from the beginning, so yeah. And with the wheels, now at launch, obviously this is C180, it actually did come with the 16-inch wheels. These aren't really suited for this kind of car. It actually deserves much bigger wheels, but yeah, this car has it. It is what it is. But yeah, so with the sporty looking front and the profile, and with the very basic looking with the front and the rear. The C180 was basically that it is as is. And the best part is, the character line sort of merges with the rear of the car and then sort of connects all the way to the roof, to the top of the boot lid, and that's pretty cool. And the tail lights obviously very different from the outgoing W203. And I actually like the pre-facelift design of the tail lights as opposed to the facelift one. That's partly because it has indents in the tail light to give it that sort of distinct shape. Otherwise, the facelift one has a flushed tail lights. Not really good looking, but this one's actually even better, and it's tinted, so it looks even better. So yeah, that's pretty much it with a quick overview of the exterior of the car. So yeah, now I guess it's time for me to drive and see how it's like. Alright, now we are driving the C180. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the ride quality of the Mercedes. Now, compared to all Japanese cars, this car sits way higher than any traditional Japanese car. The closest a lot of people can compare it with is the brand new Civic, the 10th generation car. So compared to that car and this car feels robust in a way that it feels solid, meaning it's well built, you can feel the suspension doing its job, and it gives you a much smoother sort of ride quality. I don't want to say it's like Mercedes S-Class like ride quality, but it's darn good. It's actually way better than any traditional Japanese car you can think of. And although the roads aren't really perfect here, as you can tell, in much smoother roads, this car is actually really good. It's actually really nice to be in. And yeah, for a long distance journey, I think I'd rather be in this because it's much more comfortable. Though it does show its flaw in more, you know, bad roads. So the bumps and everything does come through the cabin, and obviously it kind of makes sense because this is the sort of the low-end kind of Mercedes C-Class. You don't get the best of suspensions like adjustable dampers or whatever. So it's a very basic design, but the way they've handled the cabin, the chassis, and the suspension is actually really good. The closest I can think of that can be compared with the Mercedes, I want to say, is the Toyota Camry. The Toyota Camry is just as good, probably, in that regard. Now, that said, let's come to the engine and the gearbox, because obviously that's C180's probably its weakest part, because unfortunately, for all the things that I knew about the C180, it isn't actually really true. For instance, this isn't a 1.8 supercharged engine, it's a 1.6 supercharged engine. And the more I think about it, it kind of makes sense. Obviously, the 1.6 is, there's a reason why it's supercharged, to give that sort of low-end torque. That's why it's force inducted. And yeah, obviously, it's not a powerful engine. You're only like dealing with 130, 140 horsepower, and not much of torque anyway. But it's there to keep the car moving. It's not underpowered in a way that you have to be way above halfway through the RPM, through the rev range, basically just to get the speed going. So in that sense, it's still more drivable than most cars that have NA 1.6, 1.8 liter engines, like for instance the Honda Civic. But the biggest downside, I want to say, is basically the gearbox. Really, it's a Triptonic. I think it's a 7-speed. It's not the most greatest gearbox. I mean, this is definitely from 2007. It has shown its age, but keeping it in D, the drive, just driving it through, it does change gears smoothly. It's not terrible. You don't jerk around, and it's kind of meant for this. It's a more luxurious kind of setting for the C-Class, and not really in a sporty way. Although there is the sport button, when you press it, it does tend to change gears much later and all the way through the rev range basically. But yeah, all in all, it's a much sort of luxurious composed kind of ride with the C180. It doesn't show that hint of being a more athletic car like let's say like the BMW 3 Series, but it has shown hints of being a great car, and that's through the chassis. And the way you can tell it is through the steering rack. It is a hydraulic rack, and the best thing about this is that you feel the car moving underneath you. It's a good rack, it has a decent speed. You turn the wheel and the car does move. You do get pretty decent sort of information coming from the wheel all the way from the tires, and it kind of shows the sort of the balance of the chassis. It's actually a really playful chassis, and that's one of the reasons why they managed to take it all the way to the C63, because the chassis was so good. The best they could do is to take this car and put a big engine and to make it really shine. Obviously this is not a C63, this is once again a C180 with a 1.6 liter engine, not the most powerful car in the world, but if you really want to stretch this car, it can do it. Just like how my brother basically did the skid and a bit of an oversteer. The car does let you do it because it has the sort of the balance, and it has that sort of the composure with the chassis and how it plays around underneath itself. So it's a really good car. That's why it's so favored for people like drifting and whatnot, because it's just that great. And so yeah, that's basically it. Apart from the gearbox and apart from the engine, the underpowered engine, it's actually a really good car, a more luxurious car, even if it's a low spec car. People love it, a lot of people have bought it, and yeah, and that's basically pretty much it, really. So that basically defines the C180, and that's one of the reasons why it has become sort of a base car for a lot of AMG conversions, like the C63 or whatever. So yeah, that's basically pretty much it. It's a good car, but it's still not the great kind of car that I want to have, because it's still not very athletic enough. I have no idea how the BMW 3 Series would compare to it. I have no idea how the Audis would compare with it. But yeah. So yeah, that's basically pretty much it, how the Mercedes C180 basically drives. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this video got a bit too long because I talked too much about how the car drives and talking about how the exterior of the car looks. But yeah, I would have loved to talk about the interior and the practicality side as well. But yeah, it's my first video. I want to keep it as short as I could, and hope you and give you guys sort of the review that I thought would be really great. And hopefully record more car reviews in the future as well, starting from my C180. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and share this video as much as you can. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.